It's a societal sort of culture that says, you don't want to get pregnant, so go on birth control. And we don't really think twice about it until we're like, wait a minute, I want to have a family. And we think as soon as we come off, then it's going to magically happen. And it is so often not the case. 1 in 6 women are struggling with trying to conceive. So it really is a big issue.
Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where women come together to share their unfiltered experiences navigating womanhood. Join us as we dive into candid conversations about periods, perimenopause, postpartum bleeding, miscarriages, and more. This is a safe space where we embrace the raw, real, and often unspoken aspects of being a woman. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and heard. This is Unapologetically Woman. Welcome back, everybody, to Unapologetically Woman. I am here with the lovely Ashley Holmes, who is the CEO and founder of Holistic Fertility Coach Incorporated. She supports women trying to conceive by creating a fertile foundation to nourish themselves from within. And she is passionate about this and provides one-on-one personalized energy medicine that aligns and balances mind, body, and spirit. Thank you so much, Ashley, for joining me. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. And I'm excited to be here and to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much. So listeners, I'm going to give you guys a little background on this interview. So earlier we had tried to do this recording and my internet was all jacked up. So you guys are seeing me here at the Starbucks behind me. Okay. Pay no mind to that. That's not normal for you guys viewing on YouTube. Okay. But we do what we have to do. Okay. Because Ashley's story is absolutely amazing. And I am looking forward to her telling us about her fertility journey and how she got actually into the business that she is in now. And that started because of her own fertility experience. Okay. So she is an expert at this. Okay. And provides amazing advice. And the reason this all started was because of her experience into womanhood, which I think all of us can really relate to. So we're going to start with that part of Ashley's story. Ashley, let us know and the listeners know when you actually started your period and how you were introduced to that, into womanhood and that experience for you.
I was welcomed into the womanhood at the age of 12 approximately, and I feel like it was very hush-hush. It was very, most of the knowledge received was from school versus from home, and I really didn't understand that periods weren't meant to be painful, that I wasn't taught to be in tune or to listen to my body, and that there's different phases to our cycle and to honor those phases. And I think that is really important information that as young women we should have to really set us up for success.
And you brought up a very good point. And one of the points that you brought up was like the knowledge, it really came from school. It was almost as if, like you said, it was hush hush, and you would think, we have mothers, you would think that they would have a more personal approach to having a baby girl, and going into like all the raw and grittiness that you wouldn't hear, and being very truthful about it. But it was very hush hush. And that makes sense because their previous generation, it was very hush hush, just thinking about the history just of this country alone in the United States, because I know Ashley is in Canada, women weren't even allowed to vote, let alone, being able to go out to work for themselves. So they were very dependent and very, silence. So not only were women's voices silenced, like our bodies were silenced. And even from a young age, like we're kind of taught to silence that part, don't let people know that you're on your period and try to get through the period without people knowing, because then it comes with all this mockery, right? Like, oh, well, she's in a mood, so she must be on her period. So then you don't want to talk about the fact that you're on your period and like all this shame and misconceptions, right? And I love how, you were saying that learning from a young age, learning about the different phases and how to actually work with our cycle is very beneficial, and it sets us up as women. But as we know, women are considered second class. So why would they teach us that, right?
I feel like it's really a disservice, and it's something that I've intentionally made sure that my daughter is prepared and equipped for, because I don't want her to be caught out or surprised. I want her to know what is coming. And I think it's really your responsibility as a parent to do these things for your children and to empower them as much as possible, and to have a safe, sacred space for them to be able to ask questions and to know that they can always come to you.
I love that when you said to empower us, because that knowledge does empower us. Because when we learn, like, just merely example, I think we were talking about this earlier, right? That like women, we are on a 28-day cycle, and men are actually it's 28 to 35-day cycle. Women, depending on who you are. So don't even stick to that hard number of 28, But then men are on a 24-hour cycle, and that is a huge, huge difference, like in the way that we are regulated just biologically. It's just a fact. Like, we are on a different hormonal schedule, and our hormones, is the cause of our moods, right? It's the cause of our eating habits. It regulates so much, and yet it's just all we learn about is menstruation. All we learn about is bleeding, and there are 3 other phases that we actually go through that correlate with our eating habits. It correlates with the way we exercise, because I try to do that whole, like, get up at 5 a.m. every single day, do the same routine. And when I wasn't able to do it, I thought something was wrong with me. And it was like, yo, that's perfectly normal, because in certain phases, like your luteal phase, you really shouldn't be doing strength training. You should be doing more like Pilates and yoga, and to understand, like, hey, this is our natural flow as women. It is empowering.
Definitely. And we are not necessarily set up to work with our divine feminine architecture. We are our own creatures, and we're not meant to approach life in the same masculine way that men do. And it's really just honoring that within ourselves and treating this as a sacred vessel, and understanding that what we do now impacts our future, because I think so many of us, myself included, went onto contraception and as a teenager, not realizing what the effects may be long term of that, or that could affect my fertility. And there are so many things that we just do unconsciously because it's kind of ingrained in us. It's a societal sort of culture that says, you don't want to get pregnant, so go on birth control. And we don't really think twice about it until we're like, wait a minute, I want to have a family. And we think as soon as we come off, then it's going to magically happen. And it is so often not the case. 1 in 6 women are struggling with trying to conceive. So it really is a big issue.
I'm glad that you brought up about the fertility thing. And actually, I want to learn more about that in your journey, because you said, as a teenager, you get put on these pills, and, you think, okay, when I get off of it, I'm just going to easily, get pregnant. And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a huge misconception. In fact, I've even heard, like, growing up, I remember people saying that you are most likely to get pregnant quicker as soon as you come off the pill. It was actually the exact opposite. And it's the exact opposite that happens to women. And I would love for you to explain your experience. So you get introduced to womanhood, and it's basically like a hush hush type of situation. You don't really talk about it. You're not actually understanding what's going on in your body or with your body. And you get to a certain point where you actually decide, like you said, you want to start thinking about having a baby, right? And you're starting to think, okay, how long were you on the pill, and what age did you kind of start thinking about, okay, I'm ready to start a family?
That was a good decade that I was on the pill before I was even thinking about starting a family, and just thinking, okay, I don't want to be on this anymore. And going off of it, I'm thinking this is going to happen easily and quickly. And then also learning in Canada, where I live, that, if you were younger than 35, that you had to be trying for longer than a year before you would even be referred to a fertility clinic. So that lengthens that time. So it was years before my children actually were earthside in here. And It was a struggle, and it was so many things that I was not equipped or prepared for, because as a society, we are not often given this knowledge of how to work with our bodies, how to listen to our bodies, and how to give our bodies what they actually truly need. And there was a huge disconnect, between mind, body, and spirit. And that's really what I was able to discover for myself, and went from using a clinic and unexplained infertility to being able to conceive naturally on my own. After landing on my yoga mat years later, and really being empowered in the process, and realizing that there were so many dynamics and aspects of myself and energy medicine that I was not tuning into or tapping into, that are available to all of us. And it really is just an honor and a passion to share these with women and to help empower them, because I feel like oftentimes we are seeking and we're not getting the answers that we're looking for.
I love that. And when you because you didn't find out this information until you went into a fertility clinic. So what was going on that prompted you to actually start seeking out this information? Was there changes that were you just trying for a while and you're like, okay, look, I need to go into a clinic? What was going on with you at that time?
At the time, so this was really before I was end of my 20s, going into my 30s, that I was not conceiving naturally. And it was like, okay, it's time to investigate this further. But also in my mind, thinking that if this doesn't work, then there's nothing else available for me. And knowing that once I went down that road, that it was either going to end up in heartbreak or a heart full. And I'm grateful every day that I had a heart full, but I really thought and had a very narrow vision of, this is where we're at. And if this doesn't work, then there's nothing else.
And now I have another question, because, you said that you tried the natural route. How long would you say that, you were trying to conceive naturally?
Oh, for well over a year, almost probably a year and a half.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So, and when it came to, understanding did you ever learn what was causing, how can I say, an effect on your fertility? Did they ever explain that to you, or was this information that you had to seek out yourself?
It was information I had to seek out myself. And the frustrating thing for me, and part of my journey, was that I had unexplained infertility. So all the tests always showed that my tubes were clear. There were no issues. I didn't have endometriosis. I didn't have PCOS. Those weren't what was affecting my ability to conceive. So I walked away with no answers, and also not ever wanting to put myself through that again, because it wasn't so much the physical effects of it, but more the mental and emotional toll that it was taking on me and my well-being, and not having the resources available to help myself. I had books, but reading, body scan meditations or EFT from a book wasn't something that I was in the space to physically apply to myself. And I'm sure many women can relate to that. You're not in the space and place oftentimes to be able to do and give those things for yourself. And that's why it's so helpful and beneficial to have someone to support you during that time, because it is, and it's said to be, as detrimental as, say, having cancer, to the effects that this is taking on your well-being.
That is, I love the way that you put that about the mental and emotional effect. And it's funny you brought up EFT, because I actually do that with my clients. I'll have them do some EFT tapping, just so that you're not acting in a state from a place of sadness. You're not acting from a place of anger, so that it's like, okay, let's tap out this negative energy here real quick. Let's tap it out real quick. Okay. Now that our headspace is clear, now that we can detach from these emotions, let's start to move forward here. And, you know, having that support is very important, right? Because if you, like you said, it's a very mental and emotional toll, and they kind of go hand in hand, right? Like our emotions is just a physical manifestation of what's happening mentally. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, so it's like when you're feeling these things, you know, all these different thoughts start to come into your mind. You think something is wrong with you. And, you know, ladies, young women, you know, who are listening, also another thing for us to understand is that when it comes to getting pregnant, you're only like able to get pregnant 3, possibly 6 days out of the entire month, you know, and like women need to actually understand that, you know, and women do need to understand, hey, like sperm lives in the body for 5 days. So if you're having sex prior to your ovulation and it's within that 5 days, you're probably going to get pregnant. So it's like knowing that information is, like you said before, empowering for us, you know, and even for the fertility aspect. And I recently did something about food. And I saw that there are certain foods that actually help with fertility around that time. And I'm like, dude, like we should know this stuff. We should know that eating mangoes is, I would love to eat a mango and know that like, you know, like, and it's like just simple things like that. And because our health as women have been it's been so disregarded, you know, and it's like everything that we need is from the earth. Literally, like everything that we need is from the earth. And it's just so empowering to understand and know that. And for you, you know, you're going through this, you walked away basically not getting the answers that you needed. So what was your next step then? You know, like, did you fall into a depression, or did you just pick yourself back up and was like, I'm going to look into this and see what I can do for myself? Because you mentioned, you know, going in there was either heartbreak or heart full. And it sounds like you left with your heart broken. So what did you do after that?
It was broken for a time because there was really a low point where they said, you know, this should have worked by now, everything that we had tried so far. And I was like, but I'm doing everything down to an art, down to a science. So why isn't this working? But not accounting for the stress and pressure also that I was adding upon myself. So not taking that into account and not having the tools or resources to really help navigate that in a way that was processing things as they were happening in real time. And there was a time where we were sort of gearing up towards IVF, yet I still had the medications. And so I was like, well, I still have these. I'm going to still keep taking them. And that is when I felt pregnant. But it was almost like the pressure was off, the stress was off, because I didn't think that was going to work, because they had said this should have worked by now, right? So really, we can get in our own way sometimes unknowingly, that, you know, things that are said to us by doctors, nurses, whoever, you know, we can really take those on, and we can really think that things are or are not possible for ourselves. And so I was blessed and walked away with twins, but didn't think that that would ever be a route I would go down again, to have more children, and didn't think I could have more children, and always wondering what was that little missing piece. And really, I believe I found that for myself when I landed on my yoga mat and began to understand that I am more than my physical body. I have an energy body. There's so much more to me, and that I really made that connection between mind, body, and spirit. I became conscious of my subconscious thoughts that were in my mind, and they surfaced, and it was like, wait a minute, that was running and playing in the background for decades. It's really time to make the unconscious conscious, and to really choose a different path moving forward. And not only are those things that I learned then, did they help me to conceive naturally, but I still do them day in and day out, because they have absolutely transformed my life. And I think that's the empowering piece, is that I know what to give myself on a day-to-day basis, because I know when something is out of alignment, and I know how to course correct and bring myself back into alignment, so that I can feel like my best self for my clients, for my family, and it just creates a positive ripple effect for everyone in my circle.
I love that. And I love how you brought up about the stress because, even, ladies, like stress delays our periods, so it's completely natural to understand that stress would delay fertility, because your space that you're creating this baby is full of stress. So the body is like, no, this isn't a safe space to create this.
Yes.
So it would delay your fertility, even if you are ovulating. If you're stressing about ovulating, if you're stressing about producing this baby and you're not actually enjoying having sex with your husband anymore, it's just becoming a routine and it's just becoming like a task, something to just scratch off your to-do list. You're just having a, like you said, an unconscious stress, because in the back of your mind, this isn't gonna work. So you're already like delaying the process. I love how you brought that up. And what we're going to do is we're going to go on a quick commercial break, you guys, and we are going to come back with Ashley's story about the beginning of her journey, which started on that yoga mat, you guys, and how that moment just empowered her to bring her to where she is today, y'all. She's a fertility coach, okay? So stay tuned.
Hey there, fabulous people. If you're loving what you see, don't just watch. Be part of the journey. Hit that like button to show some love and subscribe so you never miss out on what's coming next. Go ahead, click that bell icon too, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Let's grow this community together.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Unapologetically Woman. So today we are here with Ashley. And, earlier she was telling us about a bit of her fertility journey. And we are at the part of her story where her life we see starts to change. And it started to change based on yoga. And I can actually relate to that. For me, it was Bikram yoga. It was the compressions that I felt helped a lot with me releasing things. It would even be moments where I would just start crying, like in the middle of yoga, and I see like how powerful that is, especially when you talk about the connection between the mind, body, and spirit, and being able to recognize things that were inside of you that you had basically suppressed and you brought it to the forefront. And I would love for you to take us, a little bit more into that yoga mat journey. Like, was there a specific experience or moment that just triggered something for you that was like, haha, gotcha, ego, I'm overcoming this right now?
It really was an unexpected journey in that what initially drew me to yoga was the hot yoga, like the Bikram. And that's what kept taking me back was this $5 karma class. And I didn't initially understand that it was the energetics behind it that was drawing me back. And eventually, after getting trained to teach hot yoga, I just wanted to be able to teach all forms of yoga. And what really was the deep dive was learning about the practices of yin yoga and restorative yoga and therapeutic yoga, because they are very different and serve a different purpose than the more fast flowing, alignment, strength based, flexibility based practices. They have their purpose as well. But I never thought I would leave the hot yoga room, and I never thought that lying on bolsters was going to do anything for me. I didn't need that. I was very yang-like and didn't think I needed any yin. And that is exactly what I needed, and I needed to incorporate because I was too much the other way. And I think that a lot of us can identify with that. And as a society, we are very yang-like in our day-to-day lifestyle, and we don't incorporate or value rest and healing and rejuvenation in the way that we should. And so that was really an awakening moment on my mat where I realized I was unconsciously creating a reality I almost didn't want, because I almost did not have children because of internal energy blocks inside of myself. And that really was an awakening moment of, I really need to be conscious and aware of my energy, of my thoughts, of my feelings, and I need to be able to process things in the moment instead of suppressing them, and just be more in the flow of life, because I wasn't in the flow of life. I was very much wanting things to happen on my timeline, in my way, and to be in control. So if that sounds like you, Surrender is really a key in your fertility journey, and trusting your body and trusting the process and nourishing yourself optimally. And the sister science to yoga is Ayurveda that I offer to women, because it is the working of the mind and the body together, the science of that, and to know yourself and your inborn constitution, and to nourish yourself on a full level, mind, body, and spirit. You know, it's not just what we eat. It's not just one thing. If it was one thing, it was an easy, quick fix, we'd all be pregnant whenever we wanted, right? But there's not a one size fits all either. Everybody that comes to me is either had their own experience of, say, several miscarriages or never getting pregnant or whatever the case may be. And it's to honor what you have been through so far and to process that and to move forward and to understand yourself on a fuller, deeper level.
Wow. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And I love how you were talking about, like I wrote it down, the yin aspect, right? And I'm in New York. So what do they say about New York? It's the city that never sleeps, right? And that's something that they pride themselves on. They pride themselves on the hustle and bustle, which is actually not good at all. It's not good at all for us. And it would explain, why the crime rate is so high, right? Like it would explain a lot of things, because we're not in tune with what's going on inside of us. We cover it up with working or keeping going, or feeling like we just need to keep moving through things. And I love how you talked about the yin aspect of this. So you're getting into like the yin aspect of the yoga and the restorative. How is it? I feel like we all come into that aspect differently. For me, it was by practicing silent meditation that I started to come into the fact that my ego is constantly on. Like, I started to realize that I am thinking all the time about either the past or the future, and I'm never actually present. I'm never actually in this moment. And that is the key, is to be in every moment, like, because that's when the miracles start to happen, right? So it's about detaching from the past. And like you said, the women who come to you with all these previous past experiences with fertility, they're attached to it. So now it's like you have to get them to detach from that narrative that they've created for themselves. And I think that's absolutely beautiful, bringing that up. So I'm curious, you started to get into the yin yoga, you started to go into the flow here. How long would you say after that did you notice the changes and how easier it became for you to get pregnant?
I was pregnant within 6 months, easily, naturally, and quickly. And I will just also attest to the fact that these two pregnancies were very different. The first pregnancy was high risk. It was twins. It was a C-section. It was a longer postnatal recovery. And it wasn't ideal in any way, shape, or form. And on the flip side, with my singleton pregnancy, I was deemed geriatric, yet I felt very much healthier and happier the whole entire time. And when my water broke, I was hiking. I delivered my son naturally, and I was back at Baby and Me yoga 10 days later. So there is a night and day difference about what is actually possible for us, and really being empowered in the process and knowing who I was and what I was capable of. Because I didn't have that the first time around, and I really had everything that I had desired, but I had to find that and embody that for myself.
Your water breaks on a hike, y'all. Did you hear that? She was on a hike, okay, and her water broke. And the fact that within 6 months this happened, and you were trying for over, I think you said over a year, or was it over 2 years with your purse?
It was over 2 years in the grand scheme of things, and it really is just, so much stress and struggle and heartache and all of these things that I went through, and it was just like, oh, I can't do this again. I can't put myself through this again. it was just very wearing on me mentally and emotionally, and not having any answers and feeling like I was the issue and I was the problem and what was wrong with me. And people come to me and say, "Can you fix me?" And it's like, you're not broken, but perhaps we need to change the narrative and the relationship that you have with yourself, and to release the guilt and the shame and all of the fears that come alongside of it. And they're all relevant, they're all part of your human experience, but we don't need to hold on to them. But we often are taught and only express our good emotions, and we only let those be seen and witnessed. And we need to acknowledge all pieces and parts of us and return to our wholeness and remember that we are whole. But we often forget these things, and we only present our best selves, and we only don't voice and speak our truth about how challenging this is. I mean, I suffered silently for years. No one knew I was going through this. I left work and was hoping like, oh, I hope my workmates don't find out that, I'm going to the clinic again, or I didn't want to have to explain myself to my boss. And all of these things that really weigh on you.
Yeah, it's interesting, all the different emotions, that, you talk about when it comes to this, because there is, a lot of shame, for women when it comes, I feel like, to fertility in general, like we get embedded with this, and it's not just because of the experience, it's also because of society and how people react to you, like if you tell someone that, you're trying to get pregnant, for example, right? And then a woman, comes out of nowhere. Oh, well, it was easy for nobody gives a fuck if it was easy for you. Okay. I'm telling you right now about my experience, and you're shaming and belittling my experience, and I think that happens from all sorts of directions. Not saying that, we try to do that, but I think like people need to be more conscious and aware of what goes on, because we can't just say whatever comes, and even doctors. I think doctors need to be more consciously aware of how they are addressing women when it comes to their fertility. I think they do need to be addressing the emotional side of things. They do need to be addressing like the men. They do need to find out, do you have support? Is there someone there to support you? If not, hey, we have these support groups here. We think this would be great for you, as you continue on your journey to be more empowering for you, than to be like, oh, like you said, this should have happened by now. So like in your mind, it's like, well, if it didn't happen by now, like you said, what's wrong with me? And it goes, and you're all of a sudden you're the victim. And I feel like a lot of times women are made victims when, how do I say, actually they're made the villain when they're actually the victim, like unfortunately, like rape cases. Women don't come out and say anything because of one, shame, and two, the way society is going to look at, oh, well, she shouldn't have been jogging that early in the morning. Really? That's your response? Is that, oh, she shouldn't have been wearing that? What? Like, can we put the fault where it really is? Like, why is that okay for somebody to do because of what they're wearing? Like, and that happens a lot to women, even with fertility. Now, all of a sudden, I am the villain. And it is like, okay, and nobody wants to help the villain. And I love how like you brought that out, and you're able to like help women address that. And I think you've left some powerful nuggets here. And before we go into our closing, I would like to know, is there anything, that you would, love to leave women as far as like advice is concerned, or if you would like to promote your business?
I would love to leave you with the sentiments that you are not alone, because I feel like every woman that is going through infertility feels like they are alone, because if there's not someone in their immediate circle that it's experiencing it, then they feel like they're the only one, and you're not. It's 1 in 6. There are so many people in the same space and place as you. And if you are in that space and place, I would love to welcome you into the Holistic Fertility Coach Facebook group, because it is a place for you to land and receive support without judgment. You are accepted for exactly where you are. And there are many ways and shapes and forms you can work with me if and when you feel ready, and that feels in alignment with your path, because we all are on our own path, but I feel like you will know when it is your time to seek support or to try meditation for the first time or a yoga class or whatever the case may be. All of these offerings are always available to my members to participate in.
That is amazing, you guys. We are definitely going to have Ashley's, not only her website, but we're going to have the information for you to join her Holistic Fertility Coach Facebook group, for you to be empowered, and also for you, like you said, you know, to get that support and know that you are not alone, and to be able to commune with other women, because I think that is a vital thing that we as a society, as women, we need to have more of. We need to have more of our women community circles, you know, like we need to be able to come together as women and be able to talk about what we're going through in a safe space without having judgment, you know. And I think that's another big thing, is not having that judgment when it comes to what we go through, you know, as women. And Ashley, I thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, you guys, stay tuned. We're going to go into our closing of Unapologetically Woman.